Okay, good evening and welcome to It's in the Ballot tonight. We're joined with our favourite Wellington host, Linda McGregor. How are you this evening?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to see all these wonderful candidates and such a fantastic audience.
I know, and we've got some great news. We've got 2 incumbents tonight from Wellington City Council.
Excellent.
I know.
Questions.
So for Sarah and Terry, thank you for actually being the first 2 incumbents on It's in the Ballot from Wellington City Council. Okay. So before we sit down there and get to our brilliant candidates, let's sit down and see what the electorate boundaries are and where you are and see if you can vote in Motu Kairangi, Eastern Ward.
Motu Kairangi, Eastern Ward, Wellington City Council. Council. Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward is the easternmost ward of the Wellington City Council. It stretches from the north end of Roseneath around the coast to the top of Massey Memorial on the Miramar Peninsula, around to Seatoon, around to the bottom of Moa Point and back in with Breaker Bay, around Lowell Bay, and then encompasses around the suburb of Houghton Bay and Southgate, and then has its boundary run right down the town belt back to Roseneath. So, what is unique about Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward? Well, it has Wellington's International Airport. It also has the Weta Cave, has the Kilburnie Aquatic Centre, and the famous surfing beach of Lowell Bay. Now, let's get to the important part, the voting system. Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward uses the voting system single transferable vote, where you'll be ranking your candidates in preference. There are 3 councillors' positions available, so when it comes to voting, you can sit down there and rank your candidates in order of preference. You start with ranking them as number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and so on. You can rank as many candidates as you want,
our lovely electric video is causing a lot of our issues with our technical system. It's amazing what one MP4 file does. So we're going to skip the electric video tonight, and we're going to go straight to opening statements. And let's start off with Aaron. Your opening statements on why you should. Yep.
Hi there.
Oh.
Nobody would have been here Aaron anyhow, so that's okay.
Mine's working. Yeah, we're on.
No, it's not me. It's
Mine's working.
What about the mute key on the screen?
I can speak for Aaron if you like.
Ours are working.
hello, hello,
Okay.
hello.
So
Sing a song,
Aaron's
your
ready to
piano.
go.
I can't sing. I can play guitar. I can't sing. I can play guitar. Somebody else can sing. Hello. Good.
and I'm waiting.
Okay, let's just carry on and let's
Yep.
just talk to the audience.
Okay, we're back. Hopefully working this time round. We're going to skip the electric video and we'll go to Aaron for opening statements.
Okay, are we good now? Are we good? Yeah. Great, we're working. First of all, I'd like to take 5 or 10 seconds to apologise to all the people waiting, listening for us. But anyway, my name's Aaron Gilmore. I am standing in the Eastern Ward and I want you to vote for me number 1, and I'm about to tell you why. 88% of people in a survey of the Wellington City Council in February of this year said they were unhappy with the Wellington City Council. They're unhappy because of the money being spent on bad cycleways and the 200 million NOR to be spent on cycleways. They're unhappy with the continuing breaking of pipes and poo bubbling up through the ground. They're unhappy with the unsafe central city. They're unhappy with the squabbling and arguments amongst city councillors over petty vanity projects. What we need to do is change this council. Only yesterday, the council voted to change the speed limits of 80% of our roads to 30 kilometres an hour, a continuing saga of this council doing things which the people do not want and are not happy with. I want you to vote Gilmore number 1.
Is it working? Cool.
That's the important part.
Okay, perfect. Kia ora, my name's Steph Edlin. I'm running for the second time for Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward, and I'm running because I think that our residents in the East are sick of not being listened to on issues such as Shelley Bay, and I think we need better youth representation in local government, and I'd like to see a city that prioritises public transport use and that listens to its residents. So please vote 1 for Steph Edlin this election. Thanks.
Okay, and next up, Sarah.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Sarah Free and I'm currently the Deputy Mayor of Wellington. I've had the honour of being on council for 9 years and I'm here to ask you to vote 1 Sarah Free so I can continue to work for you. And despite what some people say, we've achieved a huge amount this triennium. It has been challenging, but we're fixing broken pipes and buildings. We've increased the budget for water infrastructure hugely to fix more pipes. And we're also funding a sludge treatment plant. We've opened the St James, the Convention Centre will open soon, and the Town Hall after that. We've supported the businesses and people and kept things going through a pandemic. This is going to continue to challenging times on council, and now more than ever, we need experience, integrity, and dedication in our leadership. I listen, I care, and I have a proven track record of delivering. Please vote Sarah Free, number 1.
Okay, next up, Ken.
Kia ora and talofa lava. I'm Ken Akoi. I live in Kilburnie. I'm a lawyer and I do my own law practice in Kilburnie. And I stand for the council because I bring a lot of leadership and governance skills and I want to change that in the city council because there's a lot of infighting, it's dysfunctional, and that needs to change. And I bring that to, that's my first platform. And I have the skills and the experience to do that. Secondly, like everybody else, we want to improve the infrastructure, the water system, and all that we don't see. The things that we don't see is the things that we want to change, not the fancy one above ground. So vote number 1 for Ken Akoi.
Okay, next up, Tim.
Kia ora, I'm Tim Brown. If I'm elected by the constituents, then there are 3 things which I would like to achieve on your behalf. One is I would like to help solve the housing problem in Wellington and ensure that there is an increase in the social housing so that we can remove homelessness from the city. I would like to see a significant improvement to the affordability of homes, both for people looking to buy for the first time and people looking to rent. Second thing I would like to achieve for you, the constituents, is to make the council more responsive to the people of Wellington. I think there is almost universal agreement in Wellington that council is doing things which are different to what the people of Wellington would like done. And the third goal, if I am elected, would be to reduce the rates and reduce the level of debt which this council is intending to assume. You might be aware that there is currently a plan to increase rates by 75% and an increase of debt to $1.9 billion. And I think both of those points are unsustainable. So those are my 3 objectives if you give me the opportunity.
Okay, next up, Terry.
Nā tangata whenua o tēnei rohi, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Terry O'Neill Tukuwingwa. I grew up here. I'm a local coach of sport, a union member, and a proud renter in Haitaitai Village. Locally, during the COVID-19 lockdowns, I worked alongside social workers, council tenants, our elderly and most vulnerable, to access vaccines and kai. Currently, I am completing a qualification as an RMA commissioner. We need leaders who consider the impact that they have on others and plan for the future generations, not just for our current circumstance. I stand for the people, both young and old, and those that live here now and those that stand to grow up in this city. If you have an ambition to see more than just fixing the pipes of today, but instead planning for the day of tomorrow, vote Terry O'Neill number 1.
Okay, and next up, Nathan.
Good evening. My name's Nathan Meyer. I'm from Miramar. I'm an independent candidate. I'll vote for the people of Wellington and in particular the people of the Eastern or Motu Kairangi ward. I have 3 key platforms that I'm standing on. The first one is listening to the community. I believe that consultation process is not being followed correctly. It's more of a box ticking exercise, and I want to truly listen to what the community wants and follow through on what the community wants. The second one is infrastructure, concentrating on fixing the pipes and the things that really matter rather than some of the big pet projects that have been going on recently. And then the third key area is the rates, bringing the rates under control and stopping the massive rises in rates that are becoming unaffordable for homeowners, renters, tenants in business and commercial property owners. I have a strong financial background and I think I'll be really good at fixing up the numbers and spending the money wisely. Vote 1, Nathan Meyer. Thank you.
Okay, so getting ready for the opening the boxes, Linda.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to this.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here and then we'll be back for opening the boxes, which are all the way sitting over there. we've got Linda, who's over by the box table, who has the camera startling on her, but I'm talking. Oh, now it's back on me. Back on Linda. Okay. So Linda, are the boxes sealed?
They are all sealed, yes. Look, we've got this little torture device for opening the boxes and also for cutting off your little pinky fingers if you're telling a porcupine. Ooh.
Better sit there and watch out that. Okay, so with it's in the ballot here to explain how the questions go. The candidates have been sent a list of what the questions are, but they don't know what questions are in what boxes. So they'll be choosing which box they would like to ask, and then they've got to answer the question. A good way of describing it is, you chose it, you brought it, now you've got to sit there and answer it, is a great way of describing it, rather than is it the money or the bag. And we can, we will start off with Tim. Get the first question.
So I choose a number?
Yeah, you choose a number.
I'll go for number 1.
Number 1.
Okay.
Okay. So question number 1 is question 23. Some councillors have actively supported hate speech against cyclists. Do you think this is appropriate, and what will you do to stop it in the future?
I believe in freedom of speech. I'm actually a paid member of the Free Speech Union, so I would not stop anybody expressing their opinions. Of course, if their opinions actually do cause genuine disruption and harm, that's a separate matter, but I would in no way impinge on people's ability to express their opinions. And as for the specific point about the hate speech, I, of course, have no idea what you're actually talking about, so I can't talk about the specifics.
Like, I'm going to run you over for the sakes of it, that sort of behaviour, which you have to...
Like, if somebody says something absolutely stupid, I mean, they're not going to get re-elected, are they? So, you know.
Certainly right.
You think?
Okay, next up, Steph. What box number?
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay, we've been trending on first row first.
Depending on the show, last night was a bit different. They went all over the place.
Okay, so box number 9 is question, drum roll, 5. Okay, Steph, do you support more housing in the ward? And if so, how would you see this achieved?
Great question. So yes, I am supportive of higher densification of housing in areas where the infrastructure suits it. So Shelley Bay is a good example of housing that was put there thoughtlessly with infrastructure that doesn't exist. But I think in our ward, places like Kilbirnie, where they've got good public transport networks and the infrastructure is currently adequate, I think that that's good places for higher density housing to be developed. And if I was elected to council, I would advocate for higher density housing to be developed in areas where it would be, infrastructurally speaking, suitable.
Okay, next up, Sarah. What box number?
10. Oh, here we go. Yeah, no drum rolls? No drum rolls? Okay, so box number 10 is question 18. Many people want to cycle around Wellington but live up steps and don't have anywhere to store their bike. Do you support the provision of secure, waterproof bike parking on city streets so that people can keep their bikes in the same way you currently support car owners?
So I really acknowledge this is a problem for people, but I'm not sure that council is capable of providing, dedicated storage everywhere where it would be needed. So I think this is one that we have to help people find their own solutions somehow. you know, people have expressed to me how difficult it is in places like Haitatai with an e-bike that's heavy to get it up the streets. I think we could probably do some, but we'd have to really think about where we would locate it and the security around that. So I think it's a nice idea, but I think it needs a lot of thought as to how we could actually deliver this and help people with a very real problem.
Okay, next up, Ken, what box number?
13.
13. Okay, Ken. 13. Okay, this is question 11. What are you doing to ensure young people's voices are heard and actioned to keep our city vibrant and growing?
Well, it's nice and easy. It's just to get them involved in planning. So young and youth, the boys and girls should be invited to be part of the planning. So City Council should have a youth group, a youth advisory part of the council, so they can hear the voices from the community, and and that would provide activities that suits them, like maybe a common place, a common park, things in town and in the rural areas. So get them involved. That's part of planning. That's why I talked about leadership, is to have a good leadership council that will care for the young ones and get them involved in part of the planning.
Okay, next up, Terry. What box number?
Or 24, please, Linda.
24. Just when you're answering the question, just look into the camera. I know I'm pretty glamorous, but Okay, so box number 24 is question 27. Why should I vote for you? No political jargon, please.
Sure. Council, in my opinion, is filled with too many people that act and behave the same. We've got decades of underinvestment in our city. If it was well governed 30 years ago, we wouldn't have poo running down our streets and a housing crisis. You need people with a fresh new vision, someone who is from a different community that isn't typically represented, like young people, like Pacifica people, like rainbow communities. We need a leader that can bring all of us together for the future, and I think I'm the person to do that.
Okay, next up, Nathan. What box number?
I'll take box number 23.
23. So box number 23 is question 14. Oh, sorry about that. Question 14. Saving the planet and saving the car can't happen together. What are you going to do in the term to actively reduce the number of private cars driving around Wellington and being parked on our streets?
I think public transport is obviously an answer, that if we had a good public transport system, then we're going to get people out of their vehicles. I also think that actually providing some parking buildings in town for the vehicles that do want to get into town and actually have somewhere for them to park so they don't have to drive round and round the streets causing congestion looking for a park would also be a solution.
Okay, next up, Aaron. What box number?
Number 2.
Great. Number 2. So box number 2 is question 21. The council has to push through some big and expensive projects, particularly the Let's Get Wellington Moving and rapid transit. Do you think you are up to the job?
Wonderful question. First of all, the answer is yes. Amongst the people here, there are many people that have had experience in running infrastructure projects. I've worked in 11 different countries on infrastructure projects, varying from management consultancy actually through to actually large builders of things that move. My career was started with the Ministry of Transport, actually as an economist, actually analysing benefit cost analysis of transport projects. If you wanted somebody who's better qualified to work on Let's Get Wellington Moving, I think I would be one of the better people you could choose. We need to apply more better analysis, not spend $120 million of business case of external consultants. That is a complete waste of money. Equally, we don't need to spend money, billions of dollars on light rail. Bus mass transit will do it completely, utterly fine. And we need a council who's strong enough to understand that and push back.
Okay, and now we're in for round 2 with questions with the candidates. First up, Ken, what box number?
21.
Box 21. So let's have a look. So box 21 is question 12. What is your intermediate actionable plan for upgrading decaying and failing infrastructure such as sewage, water and stabilisation of hillsides for critical routes and suspending non-critical projects?
Again, this question goes back to leadership and planning. Plan, maybe a master plan to put in place to prioritize what's to be done first. And as I said before, the things that we don't see must be fixed first. So water, the pipes, those are the things that must be fixed first. So again, I go back to what I said before, leadership and having a master plan that will address those issues first. Don't spend money on those things that are nice to have. Do the water and the pipes first.
Okay, next up, Nathan, what box number?
Number 19, thank you.
Okay, box 19. Is question 8. So question 8. Newtowners have put forward an excellent plan for high density housing which didn't impact our low-rise areas. How will you support this plan if elected?
Look, I haven't actually seen what the plan is that was put forward, so it's difficult to comment on something that I haven't seen. Obviously, if the people that live in the area have come up with a great idea that they think suits the area that they live in, that we can keep the character areas of Newtown and still have some higher density housing, then I think it's definitely a plan that should be supported.
I am an executive of the Newtown Residents Association, so hence partly why it's in there. It was a plan in the NPS. Newtown had to build 700 houses, had to have allowance for 700 houses. Martin and Anna came up with an alternative solution that would have put 2,000 new dwellings within 40% of the dedicated NPS area, which was effectively within one block of Ridderford Street, if that's a good way of describing it. So that we haven't got a 3D model to show what it is, but they can give you a visualized idea of what plan they had, and that was based on 2 to 3 bedroom apartments as well. So.
Look, if it came from Martin and Anna, obviously they're incredibly wise people that have a lot to do with Newtown and know what they're talking about. So I'm sure that if it's something that they put forward, it's definitely something that would be well worth considering and building up in those areas that are,
And we could have an Eastern ally on our sides.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now, this me. Okay, next up, Sarah. What box number?
Box 14. So box 14 is question. I want suspense. Is question 15. Sarah, Wellington City Council will get extra rates revenue from increased housing density. What actual steps will you take to improve services to these corridor suburbs, including community services and utilities?
Yes, so firstly, people pay development contributions so that we can do these kind of things. So yes, we will have some money from extra rates and development contributions. We will need to make sure we've got the infrastructure, the water infrastructure and the electricity infrastructure. And I think if we're going to grow a lot, we do need to think about our electricity infrastructure as well as water. We have a community facilities review coming up. We've got a green network plan for the CBD, but we also need to think about greenness in our suburbs. And for the eastern suburbs, this is a chance to mention again the master plan for Motu Kairangi. We definitely want to make sure we've got green space. And some of the other things, I guess, are just making sure the transport system that we're working with Greater Wellington to make sure there's really good transport facilities too.
Okay, next up, Steph. What box number?
11.
11. So box 11 is question 17. So question 17, Steph. What are you personally going to do to role model climate action? Bike to work every day, go zero waste, eat a plant-based diet, etc.
On the plant-based diet thing, I've been vegetarian since I was 12. I was actually vegan for 3 years, but had to quit that due to severe anemia. And I don't have any form of vehicle license, so I'm completely reliant on public transport. I would bike, but I'm a bit of a fashion victim when it comes to that, and it's also not the easiest to bike when you do have severe anemia. So yeah, I think it's all about practicing what you preach. I wouldn't be preaching cycleways and stuff if I wasn't a cyclist. I wouldn't be preaching public transport if I didn't use it myself. And so yeah, I am definitely keen to kind of improve my zero waste, zero carbon ability in my life. But you've got to start somewhere, and I think at least eating meat is a good place to start.
And I learnt now why you've dropped the vegan and went to vegetarian. I didn't know the full. I remember you told me that a couple of years ago. Oh, I've dropped the vegan part. Next up, Tim. What box number?
5.
Box 5. Okay, so box 5 is question 26. So question 26. Now, this actually isn't my question. I cycle every day in Wellington. No, I don't. Yes, even in interesting weather. What are you doing to support me as I help you reduce congestion and fight climate change? Please be specific and address safety concerns of cyclists.
Thank you. I'd just like to say before I answer the question about the Newtown Residents Association's proposal for the densification of Newtown, I totally support that sort of community initiative as opposed to just the City Council coming up with a district plan, which is what they've done. And I think it's a tragedy that places like Newtown have been completely overridden by the City Council in terms of where the build is going to occur. In respect of this question, and with particular relevance to the Eastern Ward, I'm a very strong believer in the completion of the Harbourside Cycleway. I think the current situation where it cops out halfway through Evans Bay is completely ridiculous. And so I certainly would like to see a significant upgrade to the quality of cycleways where they are installed, as opposed to the mishmash that we have at present. And I also support the 30-kilometre speed limit in areas where cyclists are at risk.
Okay, next up, Aaron, what box number?
Number 8.
Number 8. So box number 8 is question 30. Defer the question to another candidate.
Well, when you get one of those, that's a booby question. If you remember in the TV show, it's in the bag. The booby prizes used to be a rubber ducky or a sack of potatoes. So you get to keep that card, even though it's a virtual card tonight, and you get to choose another box number.
12.
And if you do get a difficult question, you could go, okay, which person do I want to give that to answer the curveball question?
Excellent.
Got to have some fashion of the TV show.
No teddy bears.
You're a council candidate.
No.
You know.
I've got a 3-year-old daughter.
Oh.
Just remember the under 48s probably don't remember It's in the Bag. I'm surprised you do, Sammy. Must have seen
Remember, I researched it.
From Google. Okay, so you have got question 22. The city needs land for housing. How will you support freeing up land in the right places and without letting rich NIMBYs stop you? Not in my backyarders.
Excellent question. Very happy to answer it. Well, first of all, we don't turn the Miramar Peninsula into a social housing estate like former Mayor Lester proposed. We turn it into a regional park. We put housing where it's actually needed and makes sense to put it, in particular high rises on the Basin Reserve down through the Kent Terrace corridor. We undertake, as part of the spatial plan, more upbuilding of houses where it makes sense to do it in town centres, such as in our area, we've got it in Kilpurny. Equally, we work better with developers. I've trying to get a subdivision in my own property, and the amount of hard work is required to do a subdivision when it takes 13 letters from Wellington Water to confirm who owns the pipe and what can be done with it over 4 years means that acting as a developer is a very hard game. The council needs to do better to work with people to understand what people want in terms of housing and to get more housing built in the areas that would make sense to do so. Character housing is a problem. Particularly, we need to look at the protection mechanisms and what is a 1960s style concrete block house should not need to be protected. Turn of the century infrastructure villas do need some form of protection.
Okay, next up, Terry, what box number?
Number 6, please, Linda.
Number 6. Okay, one moment, please, caller. I'm trying to turn off my timer. Okay, 6.
It's all right. I've had some people ring me in the middle of a live show. I know the feeling.
But did you answer the phone?
No, I didn't. I went reject, and then they sat there and said, ring me now. So I held off until 10 o'clock at night to ring them back. Rule number
Okay,
1.
so you have got question 28. When will you bring in household food waste collection to stop this waste from going to landfill?
As soon as possible. I am a part of a team that has a policy to bring in a citywide food and green waste collection point. This will help with the goal to move towards a circular economy and limit the need for a multi-million-dollar landfill extension. This also hopes to protect our natural flora, fauna, and our native waterways for future tamariki growing up in our city. So immediately and for good reason.
Okay, so let's get to round 3 on the questions. Steph, you're up first.
Number 15, please.
number 15.
And then we'll get through this round and go for a mid-time break. Since we want to at least get free questions out of each candidate.
Okay, so you have got question 19. Right, I'm going to have to get my notes here because that is one big long question. Okay, question 19. Internationally, cities that are nicer places to walk around are considered better places to live. What will you do to improve the experience of pedestrians in Wellington, such as wider footpaths, less on-street parking, more green spaces, protection from the wind and rain?
I think that comes down to making the city more accessible, generally speaking, for everyone. In terms of for pedestrians specifically, I definitely would be a fan of having protection from wind and rain because that's one of the features of Wellington that makes it particularly unpleasant for pedestrians. And I'd like to see footpaths that are accessible for all people, meaning that e-scooters are not allowed to just be dumped across the footpath because that's a real danger for disabled people or people that aren't physically as fit as everyone else. And yeah, having, I think if council officers, if there was some kind of way that the maintenance of the footpath could be maintained in the same way that we have parking wardens going around assessing whether or not people are allowed to be parking places. If there were people walking around the city assessing if there's any hazards on the footpaths and things like that, I think that would be a great idea for pedestrians and that would definitely help encourage walking, especially within the centre city. In the suburbs, which is what I'd like to focus on more in today's debate, I would like to see more shelter in areas that have shops, such as Kilburnie, because it's definitely a bit of a deterrent if it's pouring down with rain to, go by foot rather than go by private vehicle. And also, I'd like to see more community drop-in centres for people who are vulnerable, because we have a lot of people who are vulnerable on Bay Road in Kilburnie. And I think if we had more drop-in centres for those people, there would be less people taking up room on the footpath, begging and drinking and things like that. So, yeah.
Sounds like we might have Fairmont Street brought to Bay Road. Next up, Ken.
22.
22. Okay, so box 22 is question 13. Okay, question 13. How do you propose to foster a more positive public impression of more active modes of transport, such as cycling and walking?
Well, I'm campaigning for a healthy, active, and safe communities. So this question is it touches on that because we want to keep people actually exercise, walking, or cycling. But not everybody can cycle because of their age or disability. So a provision of a balance of public transport, cycling, roading and walking. So those areas must be marked properly and it's enough space for the bike to go past and also walking. So it must be safe and must be balanced and available for all people that they choose the different mode of transport.
Mobility scooters for the cycle lanes then? Just because
That's not on the part.
I know it's not, but
Well, yes, I think
at
so.
Lower Hutt,
Yeah, well,
mobility
it's got
scooters-
wheels and it runs, so
Yeah.
yeah, as long as it's safe. And
Yeah, mobility scooters run right up and down the cycle lanes in the Hutt. So, I thought, well, why not have them do the same thing in Wellington?
absolutely.
Next up, Nathan.
Box number 7, please.
7. Pesky. Okay, box number 7 is question 21. 9. Dodge the question. Okay, Sammy, what does that mean?
That means you get to keep the card. So if you get a curveball question that you don't want to answer, you can just go have the question, dodge the question, and get yourself out of answering that curveball question.
Okay, thank you.
So what box number do you want to replace it with?
Linda, you can choose a random one for me.
Okay, I think we're going to choose 16. Yeah, I was the biggest pain in my ass to my parents. 16.
I like the honesty.
Okay, so box 16 is question 20. Question 20. Bike theft seems to be out of control right now, showing that bikes are very popular but disappointing for their owners. What will you do to stop thieves being able to easily steal bikes in Wellington?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess it comes down to the safer streets and communities and that. And I think, I don't know where these bike thefts are occurring. If they're in town, then obviously we need to work with the police to make sure that we've got police patrols. I'd personally like to see police on the beat and back on the street, walking the streets rather than just driving around in cars or responding to emergencies. I know that this is not exactly a council thing, but I guess we can deal with the police on that. I guess the other thing is maybe is come sort of a parking building for bikes instead of cars, a parking space that's available for bikes that has security and cameras, and people can lock up their bikes and they're in a safer environment there.
Okay, next up. I'm just trying
to sort out the questions
yeah,
so
Tim.
people can see the numbers.
I'm just trying to remember how long I got down my list. So what happens when you don't have a tick sheet? You're having to look at it on your phone. So Tim, what box number?
3, please.
Box 3. Okay, box 3 is question 24. Question 24. We know we need to pay now for essential upgrades that previous councils have avoided because of pushback from homeowners and fear of rates bills. What will you do to stop pushing these expenses onto the younger generations and ensure that the city is maintained as it should be?
I think there's a couple of factors that have contributed to the deferred maintenance, which is now looming as a major problem for Wellington. One is that the council owns assets which it is really not suited to actually manage. And I look, for instance, at assets like the library, which are apparently going to cost the ratepayers $200 million to maintain and upgrade. And I just wondered to myself why the council can't sell that facility and lease back what it requires to provide the city with a library facilities. The other, which obviously is the water assets, that we need to have much greater transparency and accountability with respect to those assets. We have the government proposal in front of us about 3 waters, and I think some sort of version of a Wellington type of 3 waters is necessary to ensure that we don't end up with this deferred maintenance problem arising again.
Help if I actually turn back on my mic. Okay. Next up, Sarah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for a big number. I'm going to go for 30.
30. Okay, so box 30, Sarah, is question. I'm trying to multitask here.
Good job.
Right, I can do this. I can do this. Okay. Question 4.
Oh, okay.
Do you support the co-governance structure proposed by the Three Waters reform?
Before I answer that, I'm just going to take a leaf out of Tim's book. I thought of a great answer for the first one, which is how would you help people with bike problem? And we've actually put a bit of money into behaviour change program, which is all about helping people with those barriers. And I suddenly thought an app for neighbourhoods to actually work out who's got garages that could be used for storing bikes, who are relatively near those other people who haven't got garages or any way of storing bikes would be a great way to solve that problem. And we are going to finish that Evans Bay cycleway. It's starting again next year and it will all be on the waterfront side. Co-governance, look, honestly, I don't support it in its current form and I'm really concerned about it. There's so much we don't know. How are they going to charge people? Who's actually going to send the bills? How are we going to make sure everybody gets the water infrastructure and the repairs that they need? And how are we going to manage those huge big entities that are going to sweep right from, in our case, the top of the South Island right through to Gisborne? I honestly have to say at the moment, I don't support it in what's currently being proposed. I think needs a lot more work.
2 seconds to spare.
I know.
Great work.
Next up, Aaron, what box number?
I remember 26 vividly, so let's go 26.
Okay, 26. So box 26 is question 1. A councillor resigns 12 months before the next election. What would you propose for the vacancy?
Okay, so the first thing, we've actually had this experience, if I recall correctly, with...
Yes, Malcolm Sparrow.
Thank
And
you.
actually, that's reason why it's been submitted, because someone was upset with the way it was handled as well.
Right, okay. So as many of you probably know, I used to be a member of Parliament, and there's a different rule for Parliament as there is for local government, as I understand it, which is quite interesting in itself. So one of the issues is that if there is there's only a 3-year period to actually have a councillor. If someone is deciding they're going to stand down within a 1-year period, look, I think a by-election is incredibly expensive and a very difficult thing to do. But the loss of representation and community from that person's community is something to take into consideration. I think the money issue in terms of how the councillor's salary in that particular case got split amongst people, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that money should have gone back into that councillor's community, because that community was being misrepresented from that loss. But I think you're going to have this problem hopping from time to time, death, disease, illness, all sorts of things, personal circumstances. So I would have said, well, look, by-election is unnecessary. I would have said the salary shouldn't go to the existing councillors, but it should go back to the community that person was supposed to be represented, and appoint an effective governance arrangement with that person could represent onto council for that community.
Okay, next up, Terry. Lucky last.
Number 4, please.
Number 4. Box 4 is number 25. Okay, question 25. Wellington Council has committed to normalising te reo. How much te reo Māori do you speak, and what will you do to increase your use of te reo?
Kia
Or
ora.
te reo Māori.
Hi. Happy Marahuru Māori month, everybody. I'm very proud to be learning te reo Māori at the moment, and New Zealand Sign Language as our 2 official sign languages.
Okay. Now, Brian Street, you keep repeating about your banging on about the cyclist comments. I've not seen you submit a question to the question line. So when you start submitting questions, you won't feel like they've been a bit gerrymandered in the cycling interest. And I can also assure you, none of them were submitted by Patrick Morgan either, if the people were thinking that as well. I don't think he knows about the question line, or I think he's steering clear of it. So if you want to have other questions in there, get out there and submit some questions. I mean, we've got, it's 12 shows left, so, we could have some decent ones out there, So get submitting. Okay, let's take a break and we'll come back with hard-hitting questions. Okay, and welcome back. And we've got Linda back behind the desk. Now, just before we get to the audience, I've been asked to address something with Ryan here. Yes, you might have felt I very heavy-handed what I said earlier. I do feel that a lot of those times you are attacking me on that. We've had a free question option all the way through. So, you know, I felt when you said I can't pay $50 for that, for the sponsored options to help fund the show, I felt, you know, I understand now what you're saying, and I just want to verify that the fact we've had 3 questions in there. There have been 125 questions submitted. 124 of them are from a free method. Only one person has helped sponsored for one of the shows, which was Lambton Ward. So that is something we want to do there. And at the moment, we would be about $3,000 in the red at the moment when it comes to venue hire. So far of going through there, and that's basically is coming out of my business. So, you know, doing it on that, but I thought that would be a verification just to put out there because, you know, as we did not get any funding for this, we're declined left, right and centre because many people didn't understand the format. However, we now have a great product here they can sit there and show them for the 2023 general election.
Can I just add to that? Can I just add to that as well? It actually isn't about who's asking the questions. It's the fact that people are supporting by watching the show and actually are asking questions. And if you think some of the questions are quite heavily weighted, then that's probably a reflection of the people who actually vote and are interested in local government elections. So we have an opportunity this year for everybody to have a voice and everybody to have a vote. And I just also want to say thank you to Sam and his team because this is self-funded. I'm here because I'm a friend of Sam's and I really believe in democracy and I think it's a fantastic thing that we're doing and that they're doing. And also I'd like to thank everybody who's watching this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get up to, so with hard-hitting questions, well, actually, no, I think we don't want to jinx it too more. We won't put the graphic thing on just to be safe. So with hard-hitting questions, they are the same question asked to all candidates as we go around in there. Our first hard-hitting question is, what is your position on free waters and why have you come to that position? We'll start off with Aaron.
Excellent. Three Waters is a misinformed, misguided, a ridiculous proposal by the current government that if there's a change in government in the election, the National Party is on record that they will actually throw it out. One of the reasons for that is that it takes away the control from local authorities, from local communities, assets, takes away the ability and uncertainty around, complete uncertainty around who's paying, who's owning, who's voting and control. It also has massive worries for some people around the issue of co-governance, what that means or doesn't mean. And also there is significant independent reports, in particular the Castellia report, which points out the various many faults in the Three Waters. We do need to change Wellington Water. The best way to do it is get people on the Wellington Water Board who actually understand water and have governance skills.
Okay, next up, Tim.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we all know we have got a major problem with the Three Waters, but unfortunately, I don't think the government solution is the right one. So I do hope that there is a dialogue between central and local government so that there's an amicable solution to this, because the idea that the government will enact something, create a Three Waters framework, corporatize the whole thing, and then National will come along and unravel it all doesn't strike me as a very good idea at all. So I don't support the Three Waters proposal at the moment, but I do support the fact that actually change is necessary and very desirable.
Okay, next up, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really essential question. At the bare minimum, we know that every household will save between $300 and $7,300. If we don't reform our water system, we will continue to have rising rates and bulging pockets full of bills that will continue to plague our local communities well into the future. It is not good enough to not reform Three Waters.
Okay, next up, Nathan.
Yeah, look, I'm against Three Waters. I think my main objections to it at this stage are the fact that it gives control away to outside of our community. As Sarah alluded to earlier on, that it's a district that stretches from the top of the South Island to the top of Gisborne. And I think the best people to control the water and what's going on with it are people that are local and on the streets in Wellington rather than someone from somewhere else in the country. I also have concerns about it that we're stopping doing anything now because they're scared about what's going to happen in the future. So Wellington is not really investing in what's happening at the moment because they're worried that the money is going to be wasted by being then handed over to someone else to look after.
Okay, next up, Steph.
I think the overall aim of Three Waters being that New Zealand should have a nationalised, standardised, reliable water network throughout the entire country is a positive. I mean, I understand that the scheme will definitely have its winners and its losers, and that councils that have done a really good job at controlling their water supply will ultimately be the losers. But selfishly speaking, Wellington is not one of those councils that's done a really good job at controlling its water supply. And so for that reason, and the fact that, you know, there's been so many issues with our water supply, from the fluoridation to the water infrastructure problem to the fact that there's no one on the Wellington Water Board that knows what they're doing. I think that for Wellington, Three Waters will be a positive, but I think it definitely needs to be looked at a bit more in depth because I think the whole co-governance thing is incredibly vague at the moment, and we need to have more answers about what would happen if the Three Waters scheme went through. So I support the goal of it, but I'm not necessarily going to say that I support the entire thing.
Okay, next up, Sarah.
Good answer. Yeah, look, I think it's really problematic because there are a lot of different communities that have different issues with their water, and Wellington certainly does have issues, and our Wellington water model is a little bit broken, but that's what actually bothers me because that's only 6 councils, and I've seen over time as we've included more councils, it's got more complex and we're less in control of what happens. I don't believe it's actually certain that this will save money. I don't think bigger is necessarily better. I would actually prefer to work with Wellington Water and sort a few of those issues out and trial maybe it getting a little bit bigger before we go bang, for full reform. I agree that the co-governance model is not certain. It's not certain who's paying. It's not certain who's billing. It's not certain how you ring your helpline. It's not certain how they're going to manage their customer inquiries. And water's so terribly important that we can't get this wrong. Already we're losing staff from Wellington Water because they're going over to the new regulator. There just seems to me to be a real potential for this to go really badly wrong on such an important issue.
Okay, next up, Ken.
Well, the principle behind this is good, but I think it hasn't been ironed out. So I would say yes, because, and it's all about performance. The previous councils haven't performed on their duties to look after the water, service it, or review, whether it's 20 years review and check it out, because now it's a problem because it hasn't been done properly. So performance is lacking in that way, and that's why we need to change. But I think it's the change is not fully ironed out. I don't want my rates, taxpayer money, to go to somebody, somebody controlling from outside of Wellington. So in that regard, I would say no, but it needs to be, the principle behind it is correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, hard-hitting question number 2. Waka Kotahi is currently building a pedestrian crossing along Common Drive, and this is to stop people running across the road at non-designated pedestrian crossings. Well, there's none along the road. Some current councillors want this to be removed. Some current candidates want this to be removed because the estimated 30 seconds increase in journey times for the average car journey. The crossing makes it safer for pedestrians and reduces walking time by 15 minutes from Miramar shops to Kilburnie. That's an estimate on there. Which is more important to you? Motorists saving 30 seconds at the expense of a 15-minute detour for pedestrians, or providing a safe journey option for active mode transports which are in line with Let's Get Wellington Moving objectives and goals of improving all modes of transport connectivity, and why have you came to that position? Now, my phone has gone to sleep, so we...
Have they got a copy of the question? Because that was a
Yes.
long question.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you do your homework about the question?
Yes, including I've had someone tell me some interesting figures this morning. Not this morning, this evening. Ken, you're up. You're up first.
Listen, I wanted the bridge because I didn't want the crossing because of the traffic. I live in Kilburnie. Getting out of the tunnel to go to Lower Hunt it's a problem in the morning, especially the weekend. If we have that there now, it will slow the traffic down. So my vote would be a bridge to go over, and that would be again would be a little bit safer, because I don't know. I mean, the driver may drive past it, speeding, trying to get to the airport, and might cause some accident there
might cause a nose to tail.
That's right, or that too. So I'm opposed to the crossing because I wanted that.
You wanted the
bridge.
The bridge.
The bridge.
And would you prefer no crossing, or the crossing if you had to choose between no crossing and the crossing?
The crossing is good. We need to have a crossing there because it's nicer for people that want to. They have to walk all the way down here to get to the lights to cross this side. So it's dangerous on that. It's a Highway 1 to go to the airport, and you're having a crossing on the road on a Highway 1. It's there are lights on this end, not far from it. It will slow the traffic down.
Okay, Nathan.
Yeah, look, so I'm the candidate that has done some research on this. I actually walked that route today from the crossing on the Cobham Drive side down to the traffic lights and through to Kilburnie, and then I walked back through Kilburnie to where the crossing is. It's not 15 minutes. There's about 2 minutes in it. So I don't know where that figure of 15 minutes of saving that time came from. The second thing is in the question, I think it says it's going to stop people running across the road because we're putting a pedestrian crossing there. I've seen people cross 10 metres away from a pedestrian crossing and not using it. And there's also a further section down the road where there's no pedestrian crossing. This one's actually quite close to another pedestrian crossing down the road. Overall, I think the community spoke and was clear that they wanted an overbridge over that area. And that would have been definitely my preferred option, that we put in an overbridge. This is seen as a temporary solution. I believe it's close to $1 million for a temporary solution. I find that bizarre that we're running that much money into a trial of something like that when we could have just gone with the overbridge to start with.
Steph, you're up next.
Yeah, with this question, what is more important to you, motorists saving 30 seconds at the expense of a 15-minute detour? Well, what's more important to me is that we consult with communities genuinely and we listen to them. And I wouldn't remove the crossing if it's already been built, because I think that's kind of going backwards. But I agree with a lot of what Nathan said, and it should have been an overpass. And also, I personally wouldn't walk from Miramar to Kilburnie myself, as there's so many buses that go between the two areas that I think realistically, if you're going to be travelling from Miramar shops to Kilburnie shops, you're probably going to be bussing anyways. I think people who use Cobham Drive are probably more likely cycling or just walking into town or Evans Bay.
And what about those who don't have the means to get there, such as, trying to get to the Winds office? That can be,
That's why we need cheaper public transport.
Yeah, because those people would be forced in the walking boat. Okay, Terry.
Like Nathan said, I'm also a candidate who's done my research. What we do know is that this part of Cobham Drive is frequented and surrounded by colleges, intermediates and creches. We're talking about lots of young people that probably don't have the option of getting on a cycleway at the moment or getting in mum and dad's car. Look, I think an overpass would be awesome. What we do know is that will cost 10 times the amount of money and will be delivered in another 10 years. As a local ward councillor, We've had somebody die on this road, really near the proposed Cobham Drive crossing. So actually what I want for my community, what I've heard from young people, is that we need a solution now. And I'm really sorry that it feels like we can't achieve a gold standard for everybody, but I just can't put at risk delaying a project like this for 30 seconds to save a life.
Okay, next up, Aaron.
What's really interesting is that, if I recall the correct numbers, 90% of the community expressed disagreement with the proposal put forward. And this shows you that this council does not listen to its constituents and will actually look at alternatives. Most of those people put forward the fact that the 30-second notion of a car being deferred, actually that person's time is of value. And a person's life is of value as well. And as the government's made decisions on how things compare, there are tens of thousands of cars every day that go along that route. It's going to take lots of those people's time for minutes on end. It's not just the Cobham crossing that's changed, also the speed limits that along the route, both ends of the route have changed and have dropped. So there's significant other changes that have occurred, not just the Cobham crossing. Everybody that I've spoken to on this issue, everybody is in agreement that this crossing is wrong, should never have been put forward. And even if it is put through, the people will not use it. Someone's still going to get killed on that road. They're going to cross not at that crossing, somewhere else. So we actually need to listen to our community, and actually that's one of the key roles for a councillor.
Okay, next up, Sarah.
So look, my personal preference was to keep the people and the bikes at road level and actually build something that would let the cars go over the top. And you wouldn't actually need that much headroom for that solution. But it's an expensive solution. And so all things were looked at, the bridge, the underpass idea that I've just described, and a level crossing. And given what Terry said, the expense and the fact that we really actually don't know what the demand might be. We do know people are trying to cross, but we don't know how many people want to cross. I think putting in the crossing is actually a reasonable thing to do at this point in time. It has been designed to link with a walkway. It's been designed in two halves, so it minimises the delay for cars. And I don't believe it is actually 2 minutes difference. If you want to go to the ASB Centre, you've got to go all the way up to lights and then all the way back. Some trips might be about the same, but a lot of trips are a lot longer. I think that you've got a lot of other delays like the roundabouts and having to slow down at the lights anyway, so this is not going to add a huge inconvenience. And if it does, there is actually a back pocket designed for a bridge that Waka Kotahi have said that they could install if there's a real problem.
I think the question on that, it was that it's going to say 15 minutes going from Miramar to the Kilburnie shops. So walking in that particular part of the route, all of the rest of the route is the same. So it was only 2 minute difference running from the crossing down to the crossing off to the shops and then back from the shops to the other side of the crossing.
Okay.
Okay. And Tim.
We all know that Let's Get Wellington Moving has spent over $50 million on consultants. It's committed to spend another $120 million on further consultancy. And the idea that it couldn't possibly afford to put an overbridge or an underpass at this situation for pedestrians is frankly utterly absurd. We all know that Waka Kotahi, who are responsible for State Highway number 1, and this of course is on State Highway number 1, are completely indifferent to pedestrian safety in Vivian Street, where it crosses Cuba Street and Willow Street and Taranaki Street. So frankly, I find that it absolutely laughable that their priority is pedestrian safety, because they show with the heavy load of traffic that we see down Vivian Street that they are basically indifferent to pedestrians. So I think this is completely absurd that they couldn't have actually built a crossing at this point that wasn't that grade.
Okay. So, hard-hitting question number 3. There is currently no funding allocated to the physical work for climate change adaptation. All these seem to be in the pipeline as planning. Communities are looking to the council for a creation of a multi-party, community-led, council-funded task force to accelerate the impact assessment and actions. Do you agree with the community's calls for such a response? And if so, how would you like to see it resourced and funded? Thank you for the timer. It's a nice experience to actually have that done on me. Sarah, you're up first.
Okay. Well, we have actually thought about this because it's becoming obvious that it is really important to communities. Slips, floods, storm surges, people are concerned about their properties and what council might be able to do to help them. We have asked as a KPI for our chief executive for a climate change community engagement roadmap, which is how will we go about having these hard discussions with our communities. That's due in April of next year. So whoever's on the council next time can pick that up. And the funding would have to come through an annual plan or a long-term plan process. But first we need to know what communities actually, they need to be part of this discussion, as probably do iwi. What are the problems? What might be the solutions? How are we going to manage this? Because there'll be different solutions for different communities, different challenges. Thanks.
Next up, Terry.
As we know, it is often cheaper to fund prevention now than it is to fund an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. That's why, for me, I'm someone with a climate change background. I worked on the Zero Carbon Act. A lot of my attention has been about what we can do to limit our carbon emissions by 2050. We've made that a goal as this council. I'm really interested in an adaptation plan developed with the most impacted communities. So all of our residents living around the coast, our young people in our Pacifica communities in particular. And the other thing is there's no central government plan for adaptation right now in terms of climate. So through RMA reform, I'll be looking with hands out, with palms out to our central government and that relationship to stand up for our residents, because we do need more money in the kete for that one.
Okay, next up, Nathan.
Yeah, look, I think we can't do anything without a plan. So you definitely do need to put the planning in place before you can actually start doing anything. And I guess with the climate change, we really need to figure out what it is that we're trying to adapt to and what we're trying to fix. Is it that we need to build seawalls? Do we need to retreat the houses back from the coast? Or is it better drainage of the hills and for stormwater when we're getting this excess water? So I really think that we need to have a clear plan and know what we're actually trying to achieve before there's anything that we can actually do and put action into place. And sometimes it's not an overnight solution. I think that we'd all like to move quickly on some of these things, but it just can't be done because we really need to know what it is that we're trying to stop or repair, and then take a more measured approach and integrate that into our planning over time.
Okay, next up, Aaron.
Everybody here seems to be talking about spending more money rather than actually transferring money. So there's 200 million more to be spent on cycleways, and I think that money could be better spent on looking at some of the issues that are raised in this question. There's equally another more money being spent in insurance, and currently in Wellington that is double spent. That'd be much more sensible to be spent on looking at all the natural hazards Wellington faces, not just climate change. Significant insurance risk exists in Wellington, particularly around earthquakes, and more work needs to be done about that. And I think the council needs to take some role in that. There's a major issue for that, particularly for apartment owners and buildings in central Wellington, that is not climate change related. It is natural hazard related, and we need to take that into account. I grew up and experienced the Christchurch earthquakes and saw at first hand what happens in major natural hazards when a council has not been prepared properly, and that was devastating, and 185 people died. So they are the risks that we face here and now, not some climate change risk that's going to take 20, 30, 40 years to take an impact.
Okay, next up, Ken.
Yes, this should be some input from the central government. This is not only a problem for Wellington. This is a national problem, climate change, and should be a bigger input from central government. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the issue is there. And also, we must have that master plan to priority our spending and, not the niceties, do these things. Because the climate change will affect all the water, the drains and the pipes, because, it's the slips and because of the change in climate, and La Nina or La Nino will keep coming, because and all we have to do now is be prepared and have a plan in place, because the climate change won't stop.
Okay, thank you. Steph.
In terms of the first part of that question, do I support it? Yes, I do, because I think community-led plans like that are great, because it's really, people who have coastal homes and stuff like that who are the ones that are really anxious about climate change and who are really keen to see it mitigated and probably have some of the better ideas. So I think we should be getting knowledge from people who have that real everyday community knowledge themselves. In terms of how would it be funded, I mean, I would like to see a citywide resilience plan funded because of a lot of the stuff that Aaron's kindly mentioned before, because I think our resilience is really important, and climate change mitigation, things like sea level rise, is a really important part of that. And how would I fund it? I would take away the money from other glamour projects or pet projects, as some people like to call them, that have already been allocated funding for.
Okay, Tim.
Just because you don't have a plan doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And as we've seen with the lack of planning in respect of earthquake resilience, Wellington City Council is now having to spend something in the vicinity of $600 million on the library upgrade, the town hall upgrade, the civic chambers, the St. James, etc. So not having a plan is completely ridiculous. And I know from my experience at Wellington Airport, where we did or do plan very thoroughly, that the seawall protection at the south end of the runway is a multi-$100 million project. And that's just one small stretch of Wellington coastline that is going to have to be strengthened in the next few years. So it's really is an absolute dereliction of their obligations to the Wellington people that they don't have a plan in this area, and they should get on and find out what it is going to cost to actually cope with climate change.
Thank you. Okay, we got 7 minutes to when the show finishes, or targeted finish time, I should say. So if we can get the closing statements on the leaner side, that would be very much appreciated. And first up is Nathan, on why the Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward voters should give you their #1 vote.
Thank you. Look, I believe that I've shown here tonight I understand the issues that are facing the Eastern Ward and the Motu Kairangi Peninsula. I think that we need some fresh faces on the council. We need to start doing things differently and look for at doing things in a different way. I've got sound financial background and management, and I can bring those skills to the council and start spending that money more wisely. And I think that classic chance of the overbridge over here, that $10 million for an overbridge, it's just absolutely ridiculous, those numbers. Those projects can be done cheaper. I believe there's another bridge in Hamilton that's very similar over in a roundabout that we could start using their plans and their ideas, and it's going to make these projects cheaper, but it's just looking at things and doing them in a different way. And that's why you should give me your #1 vote. Nathan Meyer, thank you.
Okay, next up, Aaron.
As we've heard a lot tonight, this city council is not popular with the current people. 88% of people are unhappy. So we need to change the city council. We need to put in place people on this council who have the skills and experience in managing infrastructure, understanding the cost of things. If you vote in the current city council, you're going to get an 80% increase in rates, a 1.5 billion increase in debt, and that excludes Let Gets Wellington Moving. We will get a council that gives you not what you want, that will not listen to you. You need somebody, group of people, the 3 here, who you can choose to help make that better. We need to put people on that council with the skills and expertise and understand and listen to the public, who keeps treating rates as it's their money, just like it's your money. That's why you need to vote Gilmore 1.
Okay, next up, Ken.
Yes, vote 1 for Akui Ken, and don't worry about the rest. Why am I standing? Why you should vote for me? I have leadership skills, governance skills, and the current council at the moment is dysfunctional, I keep saying, and people have spoken. Whenever I door knock, they say, get rid of the whole lot of them. Sorry, Sarah. But that's how the people see the council. We need change. And people up here now, you can vote Ken Akui for one of those changes.
Okay, next up, Tim.
Wellington City Council is a big business. It spends about $1 billion a year. It's approaching $2 billion worth of debt. It's got around 1,850 employees. And I think, to be honest, I feel like it's actually operating in a manner that is out of control of the councillors. It seems to me that council officers and staff are heading one direction, and very frequently elected representatives are heading in another. And I would like to say that my governance experience at Wellington Airport, New Zealand Bus, Infratil, Morrison & Co, and elsewhere gives me at least some sort of clues to what could actually be done to ensure that the council became more responsive to the elected representatives and also more responsive to the people of Wellington, which is really what my primary objective is, to just make sure the council starts listening to the people of Wellington more and doing what they want rather than heading off in strange directions.
Okay, next up, Steph.
Why you should vote 1 for Steph Edlin? Well, I have leadership experience. I have governance experience. I'm a political science student, so I understand the political process and I understand the value of evidence-based decision making. I have business experience as a business manager for a market research company. And also, if you're going to take a gamble and vote for someone who's not an incumbent, which you have to be doing because one of our incumbent councillors is standing down, I'm a really good bet because last time I got 1,430 something votes, which is a considerable amount of votes for someone who'd only spent about $1,000 on my campaign and was only 18 at the time. And so I think because of that, I've proven that I can get a decent amount of votes. I'm an appealing candidate and I'll listen to the community, as that's one of my major incentives for running in the first place. In terms of my top priorities, my number one priority is fixing our infrastructure by supporting our current Three Waters restoration project. And by that, we'll actually have to be lobbying central government to be able to bring in the labour required to complete that project, because we currently don't even have enough people here that'll be able to work on that. My second priority is incentivising public transport use. And that's in turn going to improve transport for everyone. So seeing things like more bus priority lanes in our suburbs so that it's a quick commute from even Seaturn to the CBD under 25 minutes. I believe that's possible. And my third priority is ensuring that council spends wisely, because as a lot of the other candidates have mentioned tonight, there's definitely a lot of projects that aren't necessarily very popular with Wellingtonians that have been getting a lot of funding. And this is the time more than ever for us to be focusing on the basics. And so, yeah, that's why you should vote number 1 for Steph Edlin. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Terry.
Please don't get rid of the snow leopards, Tim. Look, why you should vote Terry O'Neill for Te Motu Kairangi Eastern Ward. This place is my home. I love this city, and especially the places where my family and my siblings have invested in. I'm a renter at the moment, and I would love to be able to see the option of a livable city into the future. We have a climate crisis, a housing crisis, and a cost of living crisis. Some of these days we have a my bus won't show up on time crisis. And I think that you really do need leaders at the grassroots level to be able to have the courage, have those hard conversations about climate change adaptation and cycle lanes. And I'm also a strong believer that a lot of the time when we're facing such large challenges as these, half of the input that you get into making a good, strong decision is a leader that has the courage to lead and not always just take a straw poll of their community.
Okay, next up, Sarah.
Well, I find it quite difficult when people quote that 88% disapproval rate, because it was one question in quite a small sample. And what I'm hearing when I'm out on the streets and door knocking is actually people do understand it's been an incredibly challenging time on council. And it really was the council of two halves. It started off very difficult, but we have achieved an incredible amount. And I'd have to say in the last 3 years, more than I've ever known on any other council. The challenge has been that a lot of decisions that we've had to make are very expensive. And we've also had to start planning for a future that other councils kicked down the road. And so we are looking for infrastructure planning. We are looking for resilience planning. We are starting to think about the really big picture and planning for the future. I think you do need continuity. I think one of the problems is that every single time I've been on council, we've had a change of about a third of the council every single time. And you're going to need some people who have the knowledge, the institutional knowledge, who have got the continuity, who've got a little bit of maturity and experience. one of my strengths is I've been able to work collaboratively across a very difficult range of situations and sometimes very diverse personalities, diverse political backgrounds, to try and bring some consensus to council and help drive us forward. It has been challenging. I would ask for your number one vote for my experience, my integrity, and my vision still for a future that Wellington that's really livable, that does respond to our climate challenges, our earthquake challenges, our need to live in a quality city that provides great housing. But we're going to have to do things differently and look for new challenges and new ways of doing things. And I think that I am a person who can do that. I've got a proven track record of delivering for this community. I look around after 9 years and I can see a lot of things that I've worked on, including the wonderful Cobham Drive cycleways, the Leone Girl pathway, think small projects as well that I've worked with, the Miramar bid on the signs at the cutting, a plan for our wharves and the Seaturn wharfs upgraded, the High Taitai village regeneration. There's lots of small things as well as lots of big things. And I really do ask for your number one vote so I can continue to deliver for the eastern suburbs.
Okay, thank you. And just to stamp out any rumours, in the plan, Luana was meant to be the last speaker on that particular round, but Luana had to give her apologies because she was not feeling well before coming in and didn't want to make anyone else sick. So that's why Luana's not here. And Rob Golden is also unavailable because he's driving at the moment, and it's inappropriate to do a virtual, come in remotely while driving because that's kind of not really the safest thing to do. So if you want, sorry? Oh, yeah.
The bus drivers. Yeah.
No, they do some very long hours. Thank you to the candidates for being there. Thank you for putting up with that earlier nightmare. That, I don't know, you probably saw my anxiety level shot right up when there, because it was just like, why the hell are you doing that? Why are you doing that error? And every time, either the computer did the same thing, it flashed up 3 different error messages on the screen. So tomorrow we're going to be going through and having the fun job of debugging it, which is not quite what I wanted to spend my Saturday on, because I was hoping to update the website, which I think one candidate knows what happened there. We've got Paikawakawa Southern Ward at Te Whaia this Sunday. If you want to see who is going to become my next 2 new councillors, because that's where I'm currently living, back in Newtown. So if you want to do that. And then on Monday, we've got the Hutt City Council citywide double debate. We'll also have I'd say, on a Women's Suffrage Day of September the 19th. On Monday, we've had the right to vote in New Zealand for 129 years, and be prepared to hear some historic facts that I'll be writing up to give for Stacey, because she's presenting that show that night. And on Tuesday, we'll be having the other half of the Hutt City Council double debate. And then on Wednesday, we'll have the Pro City Council mayoral debate. So we'll be going all over the place and be seeing what's happening there. Thank you to the candidates, the audience, and the team tonight for making things go. And thank you, Linda, for spending another night behind the desk with me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And just before you close tonight, Sam, one of the things is that we have the right to vote, and we need to use that vote. And you need to go out there and you need to choose your candidates. Now, the candidates that are here tonight and the other candidates that are running, this is a very, very hard job. And I'd like to thank you so much for putting your hat in the ring and actually and bearing yourself to people for judgment and scrutiny. But you need to vote, because people have died for the right for you to vote. And you are carried on the backs of the people that came before you. So thank you.
And if you have not received your voting papers, head down to, now, where are the special voting places? Is there one out this way?
One in Kilburn.
One in Kilburn Library.
One in Kilburn Library. Go out, if you haven't received your voting papers, so if they haven't arrived in the next 2 weeks, go out and do a special vote. Don't leave it to the last minute, because I heard there were queues going out Manor Street when that happened back in 2019. So go out, get that voting out of the way. The great thing about local body elections, we get a month to vote, whereas the general election, we meant to all vote on one day. I do know that we do a bit of advanced voting, but where local body elections, you have a little bit more leeway on what you can do there. So if you don't receive the voting papers, they go out today. Get out and get your go out and put that special vote in, and also update your enrolment details if you're unsure. So then you make sure that your vote counts, because your enrolment details dates, the address has got to match with what the voting papers are on election day. So that's the big thing. And election day is September the 8th, is it? October the 8th.
October.
Sorry. There's been so many shows. I mean, when I started this, it was August, and it will be October by the time it finishes. So, tomorrow night we will be taking a night off, but we'll be having two watches. I think that's what we call it. It sounds a lot better than reruns of It's in the Ballot shows. The Wairarapa special at 12 p.m. tomorrow, and then we've got the Only Poto Award rewatch at 7 p.m. tomorrow, so you can have a bit of a refresher since voting papers are out. And we're doing every single day at 12 p.m. a previous episode of It's in the Ballot on there. On Sunday at 12 p.m. it will be the Upper Hutt mayoral debate if you want to see how Wayne and his challenges are going. So, have a good evening, and we'll see back on Sunday, and hopefully at Tafaya we can drag the audience across as well.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Sam.